Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At TurnKey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, TurnKey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. TurnKey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Hey, don't turn it off yet. Here's what's coming up on the Nice Guys on Business.
You know, what's interesting is the leaders in organizations are going to spend a lot of time on the students that are failing. You know, if we think of it like a school example, that they can usually point to the employees that are struggling, the lines or the machines or the materials that are underperforming, and they really want you to work on those problems. And when you show them the math that says, yes, we obviously want to address these problems, but you have 40% C students and another 20% B students. And if the C students became B students and the B students became A students, that is 10 times the level of performance of just fixing the Fs.
Right.
And it's just so hard to think I'm not going to worry about the Fs as much as my mediocre students and just trying to bring the best out of them. That math has really proven to be, you know, almost my secret formula. You know, it has really produced a lot of great results.
It is now 7:06. You have exactly 8 hours and 54 minutes to think about why you are here, to ponder the error of your ways. You will not talk, you will not move from these seats, and you will definitely not listen to the Nice Guys on Business podcast. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, Nice Guy community, welcome back. So today, George Pesansky, he's on a mission to turn those rare best day ever moments at work into your new normal. As the brains behind myblendedlearning.com, he's coached literally thousands of leaders and teams to ditch ambiguity, lead with clarity, and create momentum that actually sticks. He's written a book, his new book. It's coming out in September. It's called Super Performance. Packs 8 proven strategies to help you stop chasing peak performance and start living it every day. George, I'm excited to chat with you about it. Did I screw up that intro at all, or did I do it just like my mom wrote it?
Not at all. It was fantastic. Do you mind if I lift it and use it in any future?
Totally yours. I'll call my best friend ChatGPT. Make sure you have the licensing for it.
Okay, fantastic.
No problem at all.
I appreciate that.
Hey, before I hit record, we talked about, you know, some of the simple things like how to be your best self. And, you know, yeah. I talked about maybe some relatability to you because you just read your book, which is coming out again September of 2025. If you're listening to this before then, you'll have to pre-order. If you're listening to this after September 2025, you'll actually be able to go to the link right in the show notes and get a copy of it. But we talked about, hey, when you read the book and when I read the book, I remember the biggest challenge that I had was I was just trying to read the pages on the book.
Yes.
Reading the word on the pages and making sure that I read exactly what I had written in the book. How many people, as you approach, you know, corporate leadership or you approach corporate America, do they just not follow the simple rules like, hey, tell the truth. Hey, lead from the front line. Hey, be a nice guy or return your communications. I mean, how many people just don't understand that you just have to follow the leadership guide to become a super performer maybe?
No, it's so interesting, the observation you're making. I actually was just chatting with somebody around, you know, the challenges that some are facing in today's job market and the level of scrutiny that employers go through to make sure they hire the right person is always around their skills, their abilities, what they're bringing to the table. And then it's so interesting that as soon as they're hired, the entire system turns on the head and starts talking about all the shortcomings they have and trying to help them close all of those gaps. instead of really trying to kind of grow those things. So it's such a great observation that even the way we hire people is like just a great analogy of kind of what you're describing.
Talk to me about super performance, because I think that some people listen to that and say, well, I don't know that I'm ever going to be a super performer. And some people think about it and they're like, hey, my role is to be the best at everything that I do, and I'm going to go in with an attitude of doing that. Are people in control of their super performance, or is it
Yeah.
more people are judged and they're put in this under this microscope, and leaders are looking at them trying to find good or trying to find bad about what they're doing?
Yeah, the key to the whole book, the background to this is that we are all already super performers. There is no measurement of time when we talk about perfection. So there are always going to be periods where you're doing things really well, maybe even world class, maybe even as the best that there is. The question is, can you extend those performances? Can you tie them together? Can you group them so that they start to have more critical mass? The analogy I love is if you think about a doctor, maybe graduated from a community college and another that went to Harvard, and you have to have a medical procedure. The Harvard school just left graduation. First time they're going to be doing the procedure. The other fellow has been doing it thousands of times. Which doctor are you going to go to?
The guy that's
Right?
thousands of times, every time.
Thousands of times, right? But if your son or daughter is going to go to medical school, who do you want to go get advice from?
The other guy.
Yeah. And, that's kind of the key here to super performance is we all have something we're good at. And do you really understand what that is? And can you expand it and share it? And recognize that it's not just you, it's the people that you surround yourself with that help raise the team and even raise our community.
Well, when you are looking for somebody to hire within an organization or those organizations that you work with, when you're looking to hire someone, do corporate leaders today, are they looking for the skill set, or are they looking for the soft skills of someone? Because for me, it's like I can train somebody how to be a great editor and producer and show notes writer, but I can't teach them to really want to go above and beyond and exceed expectations from a support and service perspective. What do you look for from their leaders?
Yes. So the opportunity I've had to train these thousands of folks, they have largely been what I consider an athlete. And you're looking for that person who really has that athletic ability, and athletic in the sense of performing in that environment. And as you pointed out, we provide a lot of training and technical topics and facilitation of teams. But what you really are going to struggle to train is attitude and that will to succeed. And even that ability to have what I would call a great bedside manner. And that's the ability to kind of relate to others and to really try to help them get their very best performance. Those skills are way more difficult than a lot of the technical skills that are often part of that hiring process.
So one of the things that you talk about in your book, Super Performance, is you talk about the 8 proven strategies to turn your best moments into your everyday standard. Maybe you could tease the audience just a little bit and share 1 or 2 of those so that they understand. Oh, I understand what George is talking about exactly.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Well, one of the concepts that just works really almost every time that we think about it is what I call the golden hour. And this is this idea of, taking what is a ideal performance and being able to kind of think about what is preventing extending that performance versus thinking about the things that I'm doing that is not working or not doing well. This ability to kind of really stretch what I'm working on and being able to kind of find those root causes of my success, to think about, those simple questions, why, but asking them about, why am I such a great doctor? Or why am I so good at medical school? When you know kind of what your success is, then you can kind of get to the bottom of that and really stretch out those golden hours.
So work through that with me. I mean, I'd love you to expand upon that for just a moment. Sometimes it's hard to ask yourself the question and give yourself the answer at the same time. Sometimes the answer is, I don't know why, I always feel like I have a positive attitude. So that really carries me even through some of the challenging business times. It's like, if I always know that there is a pot of gold at the end of this rainbow, where there always is the silver lining in whatever cloud that comes my way, I always find I'm on the winning side. Now, is that how you
Yeah.
deal with peak performance as well?
It is, and I'll give you the 5 minute black belt class. How does that sound?
All right, I'm ready.
so, so I use the analogy of actually being a podcast host, even though I really am never one. I'm just a guest. That to have a great interview, you really want to have a couple of elements. One is the art of the follow-up, that ability to dig into that deeper reason why a guest is perceiving or thinking or doing something. So let's call that our 5 whys, that ability to follow up. But if we only pursued one line of thinking in our conversation, in our interview, it would become rather boring.
Yeah.
We also need to have a diversity of topics. The tool that's often used to do this is called a fishbone diagram or an Ishikawa diagram. And what it does is it asks us to think about how do people influence our failure or our defect or our success? How does the method we use? How does the machine we use? How does the material we use? And sometimes we bring in measurements and money and management and the Mother Nature and all kinds of other categories. But the idea is that we're expanding the conversation and thinking about different kind of ways that a failure happens. But when we flip that on its script, kind of flip it right over on the top, we can start thinking about our successes. So if you can drill deep and keep asking the question why, and you can ask questions from a variety of categories, and those 4 M's are really common ones that are used by problem solvers all over the world. You can kind of have that conversation with yourself, with your team, with, really anyone you're trying to better understand.
How much of this is psychology and how much of it is practice? Because it sounds like there's a lot of psychology involved in being a super performer, but it really sounds like even the psychology even is simple, though. You just have to focus on it. If you don't focus on it, you'll never get there.
There is, and I agree completely. There is an element of focus, and part of the upcoming book, Super Performance, I actually talk a little bit about this sort of Jung theory, this idea of personality type. And I really am a huge believer in this. And I know it can be somewhat controversial when it's not used properly, but people do tend to have patterns of behavior that are versus somebody who really needs to understand the details. That can make a big difference in the way I pursue gathering information. So making sure that we kind of get to the right outcome, that we, kind of get to the right results is sometimes partly thinking about the way we start with those questions. And your personality type is a really good beginning, but it's never an excuse. You can always kind of, go from having a preference, but you can, kind of move right into an ability.
I know we jumped right from me reading the intro that my mom wrote so well, right into the middle of the story. I want to back up for just a quick second, if you're okay with this, and tell the beginning, the origin story of this. When did you realize like this is something that you wanted to pursue, or when did you realize that maybe this was a space that actually needed some help? Because it doesn't seem like somebody starts their career here. It sounds like you build a body of work, and then you come back and you do this because you've realized all of the things that need to be filled in the industry.
It is a little bit of that. And I've always been a little bit of an odd duck in the sense that I don't really kind of prescribe or follow the same recipes that a lot of other people who have the same kind of continuous improvement organizations like I do. I've always looked at the glass half full and kind of focused on these strengths. The first moment for me, and I tell the story in the book, is when I was in the military and I was kind of in an opportunity to lead a tank platoon, but I had never had any training. And actually, literally, the first time I saw the tank main gun was over the back deck. And I actually thought that was the direction it went in because that was the direction the gun was pointing. And that literally was completely wrong. So not a great first impression.
Not as the leader of the tank platoon.
Yeah, here's your new leader. And he thinks that everything goes forward, goes backwards. But that actually was an enormously valuable experience because listening to those young soldiers, listening to those experienced NCOs was my only option. I didn't have a lot to offer other than listening and really learning and trying to get the best out of the group that I was given. And that initial experience and having some success with it was then what I carried into some of my corporate roles. And I found that to be a pattern that was just so underutilized. And that ended up kind of really becoming the basis for our story in super performance.
What are some of the things that if you go in and talk to corporate leaders today, and you're talking about wanting to talk to their team or help them with their management style or help them, produce a greater result, whether it's conversion of revenue or anything like that, what is it that they are experiencing as their symptoms that you are the doctor that comes in and helps them find this cure?
Yeah. So I try to kind of separate myself a little bit in the sense that in some cases, we're very direct in, the interaction, but I really want to create these super performers in their organization because that creates persistence. And what I've kind of found is that the conversation with that senior executive, that isn't always the right place to start because sometimes we don't even necessarily know the opportunities are there because we're measuring the wrong things. So I really enjoy industrial tourism, getting the chance to visit a factory. And I really like to start with the people who do the work. The amount they know about the opportunities that exist within the factory is really where all of the gold is buried. And being able to uncover the amount of capacity that exists, the frequency of failures that are really just being unaddressed, being able to kind of frame a value proposition around how if we really deliberately improve these things, we're going to change the circumstances for these employees. But most importantly, we're going to change the circumstances for this organization so that we can support both the customers and these employees. And that's usually how my conversation with a more senior executive is going to go.
So what's interesting about that, and you just made me take a whole different perspective of this. I'm thinking about it from a leadership perspective, and you're saying, well, hold on a second, before we even get to leadership, it's much easier or better for us to have a conversation with these frontline folks that are on the assembly line, let's say, because we can improve their processes to make them the super performers of the organization, not necessarily from top down. It goes from bottom up. Is that fair?
It's very fair. And I've actually found that I and others always have to be very careful of the bias that sometimes you'll get when you start with a senior leader, because they're going to impart their idea of what they believe the problems may be or where the opportunities may be. And then, you kind of have a tendency to come back and say, you're right, because that's the easy answer. Really hard to come back and say you're wrong because that's not what they wanted to hear. So I prefer not to have to do that by just coming and saying, this is what I found.
So when you say this is what I found, how, and I know it would vary from organization to organization that you work with, but how open generally is leadership to these are the 5 things that I have discovered talking to your frontline folks, the ones that are actually in the manufacturing plant or at the counter talking to people that where we want to make improvements, but they're afraid to talk to you for fear of they're going to lose their job. So how receptive is leadership to hearing new ideas, do you think?
In some cases, it always has to do with the level of need they have. Unfortunately, a lot of organizations wait until it's desperation, and there really isn't just time to fix the things that have gotten them to that difficult place. And that's heartbreaking because you can see the organization is going to struggle to succeed in the future or maybe fail altogether. So you want to kind of get there at the right time. You want to make sure that you have the time to really help things get better. And, what's interesting is the leaders in organizations are going to spend a lot of time on the students that are failing. If we think of it like a school example, that they can usually point to the employees that are struggling, the lines or the machines or the materials that are underperforming. And they really want you to work on those problems. And when you show them the math that says, yes, we obviously want to address these problems, but you have 40% C students and another 20% B students. And if the C students became B students and the B students became A students, that is 10 times the level of performance of just fixing the Fs.
Right.
And it's just so hard to think I'm not going to worry about the F's as much as my mediocre students and just trying to bring the best out of them. That math has really proven to be, almost my secret formula. It has really produced a lot of great results.
I was listening to the Journal this morning, Wall Street Journal's podcast, and they were talking about Starbucks, and they were introducing a new competition to Starbucks in New York right now. I don't know if you're a fan of the Journal. Okay,
Yeah.
so you might have heard this episode also, and it's funny because they talk about the cluster F of the of what's going on with Starbucks, and management has, they're all revenue focused, and the people that are in the 17,000 stores that Starbucks have are all dealing with, hey, look, if we want our online app, it's going to be confusing if we're getting that with our drive through with our counter people, and there is a huge gap in service that they can't seem to get their hands around it because they have all these systems that are crashing together. And it's just very interesting you say that. I would assume that an organization like yours, you'd be able to go in, have conversations with many of those frontline folks that are dealing with the customers and dealing with the customer experience and working on the solution from the front rather than working on it from a totality perspective as leadership and C-suite is working on it. Is that that's where you like to begin? It sounds like the front line.
It is. And it's finding some of those athletes that exist in the organization today and empowering them to be able to have those conversations and to have some structure, have some methodology to the way they, are deliberate in identifying opportunities and creating value. But that super performer is going to be that person who's going to be that multiplier. And that ability to go out and listen to where the work is being done and to give voice to the wastes and the losses that exist. It's the foundation of, lean manufacturing and principles like that, of really giving respect to the worker and really trying to understand how value gets created.
So you've been doing this for a long time, and you've come to the point where you said, I really need to write a book about this because I can't reach everybody that I want to reach when I need to reach the masses. So tell me about the formulation of the book in your brain, and when did you decide that this was something you were going to do?
Yeah, it was a little bit difficult. I actually opened the book by talking about how I would typically make fun of people who write books and then go out and try to consult. That's kind of my opening paragraph. I have a confession to make because I did, and I probably still will because I'm okay with making fun of myself. The thing that happened is I spent the vast majority of my career really keeping a secret and keeping focus on the clients I was working with and really protecting a lot of content and method and being very careful to not share any of the secrets for fear of losing control of them. And I realized that that's a horrible way of living and working. And in the last decade, I've started to share this through my nonprofit organization of helping and giving it away to nonprofit organizations to help them succeed. Mm-hmm. And now the book was really this opportunity to say, well, there are things here that have proven to be valuable to individuals and helping them, have a better career, to teams in producing great results, and even organizations being able to be far more competitive. Let me put it out there. And, kind of got a little bit of prompting from some of my friends and decided we're gonna give away the keys to the kingdom. And
Nice.
that's what's there for $29.95.
I found for $30, it's probably a worthwhile investment for you to do it. And what's really interesting is if you give away your secrets, people still they still want to hire you because they don't want to implement. So I think it's good on you for sharing everything. I can recall back in 2015 when I wrote Nice Guys Finish First. I remember, a whole bunch of reviews, 5-star reviews coming in. And then there was one that I got stuck on. It's the 1-star review, of course. It was the one that said, it started with DUH, exclamation point. Same stuff I've heard in every other business book. I'm like, yeah. And when people start following, be a nice guy, tell the truth, return your phone calls and communication. When people start following that day to day, all the time, then maybe I can let up on the accelerator pedal with how I want to shoot my message out there. But until people do it, it doesn't, I'm going to just keep leaning into the same stuff. It seems like what you're offering is fairly simple. You wrap it in a really good shell of super performance, but it sounds like it's pretty simple. Why doesn't everybody want to do this? Why doesn't everybody want to listen and make things better in their organization?
Yeah, well, there is, a simple thing to it, but I think we have a tendency as humans to try to sometimes overcomplicate things. And
Yeah.
we also have a tendency to focus on the things that are wrong, the things that are immediately giving us attention. It's the shiny object,
Yeah.
that ends up catching the fish. That thing is just distracting me. That 1-star review is kind of drawing my attention and focus. And that learning to let go of those things and stay focused on the basics is really the key. One of the things that we talk about also in the book in terms of just that simplification is the idea that if you want to have a great team, you want to have a great organization, it's actually a pretty simple equation, that the rate of addition has to be bigger than the rate of subtraction. And pretty simple thing.
Right.
But if you think of it as an analogy, like a cup or a bucket, we put a lot of money, energy, time, and effort into trying to improve things and add things and grow things and buy things and increase capability. And a lot of organizations spend very little time preventing their best talent from leaving the organization, or being able to document the processes that are working really well, or listening to the people who are doing the work who really know that you shouldn't put this app with this many options in the drive-through, or you're going to have a line around the block, right?
Amazing. Well, the book is called Super Performance: 8 Strategies to Reach Full Potential for Yourself, Your Team, and Your Organization. George Pesansky is the guy that wrote it. He's the one that was here today. And we'll make sure we put information about his book and access to it right there in the show notes. Again, if you're listening to this before September, and I think we air somewhere in the early part of September. So if you're listening to this in September, it's just about, if it hasn't already come out, just click the link in the show notes and you'll be able to either pre-order or get your copy of it. Anything I'm supposed to be asking you, George, that I have not asked, or anything that you want to make sure that we impart, what stage of wisdom in your head to our community right now that's listening?
No, really, really appreciate it. Just remember that if you're a little better tomorrow than today, you'll always be your best self.
Nice. Well, well spoken and great closing comments. For those in our community, again, check out George's book and his website. All the information will be right there in the show notes. George, thanks for being in the hot seat. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, Doug.
Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the nice guys on business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Seriously, it'll only hurt for a minute or two, 10 tops.